You set your potted cucumber in a sunny spot. You gave it fresh soil. You watered every morning. And the first cucumber you picked was so bitter you spit it out. Or worse, the plant flowered all summer and never gave you a single fruit. You blamed yourself. Too much water, not enough fertilizer, wrong spot. But the real problem was never your green thumb. It was garden bed advice forced onto a plant trapped inside a pot. A cucumber is 95% water. On a hot afternoon, one small container can swing from moist to bone dry fast enough to stress the plant. And once that bitter compound gets into the fruit, it does not come back out. That cucumber is ruined before you ever pick it. In this video, I'm going through 7 container mistakes that keep killing potted cucumbers and exactly how to fix each one. The last mistake is the cruelest, because it has nothing to do with soil, water, fertilizer, or sunlight. You can do everything right and still get nothing. Put your zone in the comments. I read every single one, and it helps me make videos that actually fit where you garden. Mistake number 1. Bitter fruit. Your plant made it taste bad on purpose. You waited 2 months. You watched the vine climb. You picked your first cucumber, sliced it open, took a bite. And your mouth said no. Bitter. So bitter you spit it into the sink. That bitterness did not come from the seed packet. It is not the wrong variety. You will not find this on the seed packet or the label. Your plant made that cucumber bitter on purpose. Here is the part nobody puts on the label. Cucumbers carry a compound called cucurbitacin. It sits mostly in the stems and leaves, away from the fruit. But when the plant gets stressed, it floods that compound into the developing cucumber as a defense. The plant reads stress as danger, and it responds by making the fruit taste so bad that nothing would want to eat it. In a pot. That stress comes from one place. The soil dries out in a single hot afternoon. You come back the next day and soak it. The plant swings from bone dry to drenched. And every time that swing happens, another wave of cucurbitacin moves into the fruit. The compound pools at the stem end, the part closest to where the vine connects. That end can carry up to 70 times more bitterness than the blossom end at the bottom. And once it is in the fruit, it stays. You cannot wash it out. You cannot wait for it to fade. That cucumber is bitter forever. Oregon State Extension points to water stress as one of the main reasons cucumbers turn bitter. What that means for your pot is simple. The bitterness was never in the seed. It was in the watering. One honest note before the fix. If you already picked a bitter cucumber, that fruit is done. You cannot save it. But every cucumber still growing on that vine can be saved if you fix the watering starting today. Here is exactly what to do. Check your pot every single day during summer. Push your finger about 2 inches into the soil. Dry at that depth means water now. When you water, water deep. Keep pouring until it runs out the drainage holes. No shallow sips. Shallow watering only wets the top inch, and the roots below stay parched. Spread about 2 inches of mulch on the soil surface inside the pot. Straw or shredded leaves both work. That mulch cuts evaporation by 25 to 30% and keeps the soil from swinging between extremes. If you grow in a fabric bag, know that it dries out 30 to 50% faster than plastic or ceramic. On a day above 90 degrees Fahrenheit, you may need to water twice, once in the morning, once in the late afternoon. When you harvest, trim off about 1 inch from the stem end before you eat it. That is where the compound concentrates. Cut it, toss it, eat the rest. If you want a variety bred to resist bitterness, Diva. Bitter-free even under stress, zones 3 through 11. It is the variety I come back to every time for containers. That bitter cucumber was not a bad seed. It was a distress signal. And the pot made it worse. Mistake number 2. Wrong variety. The 3 best sellers are the 3 worst picks. The 3 best-selling cucumber seeds at your garden center are the 3 worst picks for a pot. If you grabbed the first packet that said cucumber on it, you probably grabbed one of these. Marketmore 76, Straight 8, Boston Pickler. All three are solid in the ground with room to run. Inside a container, they fall apart. I lined up the top sellers and checked every one against container performance. 3 of them failed before the vine hit 2 feet. What most guides leave out of this is the part that matters most. These are vining varieties. Marketmore 76 sends runners 6 feet or longer. Straight 8 sprawls just as wide. Boston Pickler needs open ground to spread. Put any of them in a 5-gallon pot and the roots hit the walls in weeks. The vine keeps pushing, pouring energy into more leaves and more runners instead of fruit. You get a tangled mess and a few sad cucumbers buried underneath it. And if your pot sits somewhere pollinators do not visit often, a back patio with no flowers nearby, a sheltered deck behind the house, then flowers drop without ever setting fruit. A whole season for nothing. So here is your move. When you pick seeds for a container, look for 2 words on the packet, bush or compact. If your pot sits in a spot that does not get a lot of bee traffic, look for a 3rd word. Parthenocarpic. That means the plant sets fruit without pollination. No bees needed. 3 varieties that actually work. Diva is my top pick. Parthenocarpic, bitter-free, resistant to powdery mildew, 58 days to harvest, sweet and seedless at 5 to 7 inches. Diva is a vining type, so it does need a trellis, but in a 10 to 15-gallon pot with a 5-foot support, it outproduces most bush varieties and gives you more fruit per plant. Zones 3 through 11. Spacemaster is a true bush, stays 2 to 3 feet tall, fits in a 5-gallon pot, and a simple cage is all the support it needs. Harvest at 7 to 8 inches, about 60 days from seed. No elaborate setup required. Patio Snacker was bred for containers. It stays compact, gives you 4-inch snacking cucumbers, and a 5-gallon pot is all it needs. If you want cucumbers in the smallest space possible, start here. The most popular cucumber seeds at the garden center are the worst ones for your pot. And nobody on the label is going to tell you that. Mistake number 3. Wrong soil. Same dirt, opposite outcome. Inside a pot, you had great dirt in the yard. You scooped it into a pot. 2 weeks later, your cucumber looked worse than the day you planted it. The part most people skip over is the label. Garden soil and potting mix are 2 completely different products. The names sound close enough to fool you, but they do opposite things inside a container. Here is what is actually happening inside that pot. Out in the ground, your soil stays loose because an entire crew is working on it around the clock. Worms tunnel through it. Roots from surrounding plants break it apart. Water drains freely in every direction. Take that same soil and lock it inside a container, and the crew disappears. No worms, no neighboring roots, no open drainage. After 3 or 4 waterings, the soil collapses into a dense, airless block. Water pools on the surface or races down the sides and out the bottom without ever reaching your roots. And cucumber roots are aggressive. In open ground, they spread 3 feet in every direction, inside a pot. They hit the walls in weeks. Packed soil on top of trapped roots. Your plant is choking. That is why a pot full of garden soil feels like a brick after a month. The fix takes 5 minutes. Go to the store and look for a bag that says potting mix. Not garden soil, not topsoil, not raised bed mix. Potting mix. Pick it up. If it feels light for its size, good. If it feels heavy like a bag of sand, put it back. If you want to blend your own, the ratio is 60% peat moss or cocoa coir, 30% perlite, and 10% compost. That mix stays loose and drains freely all season. Reusing last year's mix works too. Stir in about 30% fresh perlite and a handful of compost to open it back up. Then spread the old mix inside a black trash bag, seal it, and leave it in full sun for 4 to 6 weeks. The heat clears out whatever carried over from last season. Your backyard dirt grew great cucumbers in the ground, inside a pot. That same dirt will suffocate them in 2 weeks. But getting the soil right is only half the equation. The way you water that soil is where most potted cucumbers start falling apart, and the damage shows up in a place you would never expect. Mistake number 4. No trellis. 3 problems start the day you skip it. Did you set up a trellis before your cucumber vine was 6 inches tall? If the answer is no, 3 problems already started that you cannot undo later. Most people think a trellis is about keeping the garden looking neat. I used to think the same thing. It is not about looks. It is about keeping the plant alive. Cucumber vines grow tendrils. Those tendrils reach out looking for something to grab. If nothing is there, the vine gives up climbing and sprawls flat across the top of your soil. Now your fruit is sitting on wet dirt. It rots from the bottom. It curves because gravity pulls one side harder than the other. And the color goes patchy where the skin touches moisture. But the part you do not see is worse. When the vine lies flat, leaves pile on top of each other. Air stops moving between them. You get a warm, damp pocket right on the soil surface. That is the exact condition powdery mildew needs to take hold. I will get into mildew later in this video, but the setup for it begins right here, the day you skip the trellis. And if you wait until the vine is already long and try to force it upward, the stem cracks. You lose branches. You lose fruit that was already forming. One change, and you are done. Set up the trellis the same day you plant. 3 bamboo stakes, 5 to 6 feet tall, pushed into the pot and tied at the top in a teepee shape. Costs nothing if you already have them. A cage works for bush varieties like Spacemaster. If your pot sits on a patio or deck near a wall, a piece of trellis netting hung from the railing or fence gives the vine somewhere to climb, without taking up any floor space. When the vine reaches 6 to 8 inches, wrap it gently around the support. Do not force it. Do not bend it. The tendrils grab on within a few days. A cucumber without a trellis is a cucumber lying on wet dirt, growing sideways, waiting to rot. A basic trellis is cheaper than replacing a dead plant. Skipping it costs your harvest. If you are growing cucumbers in a pot and nobody told you any of this before, subscribe. This is what I do. I go through the research so you do not have to lose another plant figuring it out. New video every week. Mistake number 5. Watering rhythm. The swing kills, not the amount. The amount of water is not what kills your container cucumber. The swing is. Monday, you forgot. Tuesday, you double-soaked to make up for it. Wednesday, the flowers dropped. By Friday, the leaves were curling. You thought you were fixing it. You were making it worse. A cucumber is 95% water. On a 90-degree day, a 5-gallon pot can lose every drop of moisture in 24 hours. But drying out is only half the problem. The real damage comes from the lurch between dry and soaked, back and forth, all season long. The piece that changes everything here is what happens underground. Cucumber roots grow fast, but they grow thin. When the soil dries out, the smallest roots die first. Those are the ones doing most of the work, pulling in water and feeding the vine. The next day, you flood the pot. The dead roots cannot absorb anything. New ones have not grown back yet. The soil is drenched, and the surviving roots sit in water they cannot use. Another dry spell hits. More roots die. Another soaking, more flooding. Each round kills more of the roots doing the real work. Your plant looks weaker every week, and you keep pouring harder thinking that will help. Once you see that, the fix is obvious. The plant does not need more water. It needs the same water, at the same time, every day. This is where you make the change. Check your pot every single day during summer. Push your finger about 2 inches into the soil. Dry at that depth means water now. Damp means wait. When you water, water deep. Pour until it runs out the drainage holes. No quick splashes across the top. Shallow watering only wets the surface while the roots below stay parched and keep dying. Spread 2 inches of mulch on the soil surface. Straw, shredded leaves, or wood chips. That mulch cuts evaporation by 25 to 30% and slows the swing between wet and dry. Cheapest insurance you can put on a pot. If you grow in fabric bags, they dry out 30 to 50% faster than plastic or ceramic. On a hot afternoon, you may need to water twice in one day, morning and late afternoon. Know that going in. A moisture meter takes most of the guessing out. Costs about the same as a cup of coffee. A drip timer costs about as much as one meal out and puts your watering on autopilot. If you tend to forget, that single purchase pays for itself in saved plants by August. In the ground, soil forgives a missed watering. In a pot, it remembers every single one, and your cucumber tastes the difference. But even if you nail the watering, there is one thing that can end your season in a single week. And it starts so quietly, you will not notice until half your leaves are covered. Mistake number 6. Powdery mildew. 1 week from first spot to half the plant. One morning you walk out and your cucumber leaves have white dust on them. By the end of the week, half the plant is covered. That is not dust. That is the end of your season arriving ahead of schedule. Powdery mildew takes out more container cucumbers than anything else I have seen, and any pot sitting in a sheltered spot is a target. A corner of the patio against the house, under a porch overhang, crowded between other containers with no gap between them. Here is why it moves so fast in a container setup. Mildew spores float through the air and land on leaves. In an open garden with a breeze, those spores blow away before they take hold. Put your pot against a wall, in a tight corner, or surrounded by other pots, and the air goes still. Spores land and stay. Cucumber leaves are broad and they grow thick. Without pruning, they stack on top of each other and trap a pocket of warm, stagnant air right at the soil surface. One leaf catches it. The leaf beside it catches it the next day. Within a week, half the canopy is white. And that is why a potted cucumber tucked into a sheltered corner gets mildew long before the same plant sitting out in the open. Of everything on this list, catch this one early or lose the plant. Start with the bottom of the vine. Once your vine starts climbing the trellis, cut the lowest leaves. Everything in the bottom 6 to 8 inches goes. That opens up airflow at the base where moisture collects. Pull the pot at least 12 to 18 inches away from any wall or fence. Stop watering the leaves. Water the base only. If you catch it early, under 30% of the leaves showing white, spray baking soda at 1 tablespoon per gallon of water every 7 to 10 days. Neem oil in the evening when the sun is low works as a second line. I want to be straight with you on this one. The spray works as early knockback, not a cure. Once mildew covers more than half the foliage, you are managing decline, not winning. At 75%, rip the plant out. Bag the debris. Do not compost it. Replace the soil and start a fall crop. Your time and your pot are worth more than a losing fight. If you garden in the Southeast or the Mid-Atlantic, July and August are peak months for this. But any humid area with poor airflow around the pot is fair game. Diva and Spacemaster both carry mildew tolerance, which buys you time, not immunity. Time. You cannot outwater mildew. You cannot outfertilize it. You can only outspace it. Give the leaves room to breathe and the mildew has nowhere to land. Mistake number 7. Pollination failure. Everything right, still no fruit. You did the soil right, you watered on schedule, you fed it exactly what it needed, and still no fruit. This is the cruelest mistake on this list because it is not even a mistake. It is something that never showed up. Every other entry in this video was about something you did wrong. This one is different. Your plant flowered. It looked healthy. And then the flowers dropped, one after another, and not a single cucumber formed. You tried more fertilizer. You adjusted the watering. You moved the pot into better light. Nothing changed. Here is what was actually missing. Cucumbers grow two kinds of flowers on the same plant. Male flowers come first. They sit on a thin, straight stem with no swelling at the base. A few days later, female flowers appear. You can spot them because they have a tiny bump at the base of the bloom that looks like a miniature cucumber. That bump is the future fruit. But it only grows if pollen from a male flower reaches the center of the female flower. The pollen does not travel on its own. It needs a carrier. In an open garden near flower beds. Bees handle this hundreds of times a day without you ever noticing. On a patio behind the garage with no flowers around, bees do not come. In a new neighborhood where the landscaping is still bare, bees do not come. On a deck 3 stories up, bees do not come. The female flower waits. No pollen arrives. The tiny bump turns yellow, shrivels, and falls off. You look down at the bare vine and blame the fertilizer. The problem was never anything you put in the pot. It was something that never showed up, and it costs nothing to fix. You have 2 options. The first is free. Pick a male flower off the vine. It is the one with no bump at the base. Peel back the petals so the center is exposed. Touch it gently to the middle of an open female flower. Do this in the morning when the blooms are fresh. 30 seconds per flower. A small paintbrush works the same way. Dab the male, touch the female. Done. The second option solves the pollination problem for good. Plant a parthenocarpic variety. These set fruit without any pollination at all. No bees needed, no handwork. Diva is parthenocarpic. It sets fruit without a single bee. Sweet Success and Bait Alpha types do the same thing. Plant one of those and the problem disappears before it starts. And if you want to bring pollinators to your pot instead, set a small container of marigolds or zinnias right next to your cucumber. Bees come for the flowers and pollinate your vine while they are there. You did everything right. And still, nothing. That is not failure. That is a pollination gap. Fix it once, and the fruit shows up like it was waiting for permission. 7 mistakes. Bitter fruit, fixed by keeping the soil steady. Wrong variety. Pick Diva or Spacemaster, and half the problems on this list disappear. Wrong soil, potting mix only. No trellis, set it up day 1. Bad watering rhythm, same amount, same time, every day. Mildew, prune the lower leaves. Catch it early. Know when to walk away. Pollination gap. Do the job yourself or plant a variety that does not need help. Fix them once and you do not think about them again all season. You do not need a big garden. You do not need a fancy setup. 1 good-sized pot, 1 right variety, a steady watering habit, and 1 simple trellis. That is enough to grow more cucumbers than you can eat. Be honest in the comments. Which of these mistakes have you been making? And which one surprised you the most? And think about someone you know who tried cucumbers in a pot last summer and gave up. The neighbor who said container gardening does not work. The friend who got nothing but bitter fruit and bare vines all season long. Send them this video. Do not write a message, just send the link.